One.
There is a small forest behind my house. By small, I mean at least 100 acres, but the part my brother and I used to walk through as kids is substantially smaller. There's no paths, so we would just randomly walk through it. We were 12 and 10 years old at the time. One day, while walking through the forest doing little kid things, we both saw a shack in the middle of the forest. It looked abandoned, so when we went to take a look inside, we made lots of noise, called out to the shack, made sure we weren't surprising anyone. We knocked on the door and there was no answer, so we peered through the window. We saw lots and lots of assault rifles, machine guns, ammo belts, grenades, and other weapons too. We booked it back home as fast as we could, terrified. Our parents were gone. I can't remember where, but we told them as soon as they got home. It was dark by then, so they weren't about to go up there. The next day we went up there and we couldn't find it. So we went up there a second time and we still couldn't find it then either. So we kept looking. We looked for hours, but nothing. A whole weapon-filled wooden shack, gone. No print on the ground. No clearing where it used to be. It still creeps me out to this day.
Two.
I was 14 years old at the time when this happened. I was walking home one evening from my cousin's house, which was down the road, and it was just as the sun was starting to set. The house I lived in at the time had a pretty large front yard. I'd say it was at least 150 feet from the road. We lived in the country in southern Indiana. The right side and back of my house was all forest. I had just gotten to the top of my yard and started walking down to my house when I heard a rustling and strange thumping sound, like something was running through the woods. I looked over to the right and see the weirdest thing that I still cannot explain. It was a really bright silvery and liquid metallic color, shining like a light, and it was in the form of a figure. There were no distinct edges, they were blurred, and it was running through the woods just a few feet from where the trees started. I remember it was moving as if it was running, but it was also moving at a slower pace than it should have. It wasn't super close to me, but close enough to where I had a good view as it was right across from where I was standing. I just remember being so shocked that I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I stared for a few seconds and then just took off running to my house, not looking back. I still wonder what it was. That house and the land was creepy, as we have had several strange occurrences. I'm glad now that we've moved out. It was a beautiful place. There was just a really odd energy to it.
Three.
A few years ago, I was down by a lake near my house on a camping trip. At this point, my friends had gone walking in the woods, so I was the only one there. Except that on the other side of the lake, about half a mile away, I could see a girl in a red top sitting at the edge, cooling her feet in the water. I went back to my car to get a drink, and when I came back about 40 seconds later, there was the girl standing right where I had been. She was wearing the same red top, as she was when she was across the lake. I looked over to the other side of the lake, and there was no one there.
Four.
When I was in the 8th grade, I stayed in some old barracks-styled log cabin with my student council at an empty summer camp. I say empty because school was in session, so it was only rented out during that season for field trips and corporate events, etc. I remember having a difficult time falling asleep, and being the only one awake when I heard young children laughing and playing outside my window. Only these kids were speaking in what I presume to be some Native American language, or Portuguese or something. They were loud, running around, in complete darkness, at 2 a.m. I couldn't see anything outside the window. One of my classmates woke up to the noise, and we both were whispering to each other that we thought our group was alone on the grounds. The noise faded, and we eventually went to sleep. The next day, I hounded and hounded the lone counselor to let me in on the Indian prank. The campsite was named after Native American tribe. Or any explanation for what we heard. He assured me that there were no other groups or children there and just assumed I was being an idiot 12-year-old. The other kid at the time was too girl crazy to think twice about ghost stories or time paradoxes, and I never lost any sleep over it, but I have thought about it occasionally. I might try to get a hold of that guy who heard what I did just to see if he remembers all those years ago.
Five.
When I was 12 years old, I went on a walk up the logging trail behind my house with my older sister for a cheeky cigarette. We were wandering a little idly a short way off the trail and found a clearing with a little cottage. It seemed a bit weird because we'd never noticed it before, and we joked that it was a witch's cottage. Smoke was coming out of the chimney, laundry on the line. It was quite a sweet little house, but we didn't hang about because it was also very bizarre. My other sister came home for a weekend, maybe 2 weeks later, and wanted to go fly a kite up the hills behind our house. We had to walk up the logging trail to get there, so I thought I'd find the house to show her. It really was only a couple of meters off the trail where the trail bent, so it should have been very easy to find. We found the clearing, but there was no house. No sign that it had ever been there. I'd love to go back there and see if I can find it now as an adult, but it's off in the middle of nowhere in Scotland. Thank you so much for watching and supporting the show. If you have a story to share, send us an email, like us on Facebook, share, like, and subscribe.